Hello and welcome back to the Warwick F1 Show podcast. This is episode 36 of this year's podcast. I am not your regular host, Anwar, because he is away today. So instead, I am your usual co-host, Lucy, who has been promoted. And with me today is my fellow co-host, who has also been promoted, Daniel. And we're going to be doing our preview for the Dutch Grand Prix. Summer break has finally come to an end. And hopefully we will be starting off with a good race this weekend. So, Daniel, what would you say is kind of the main thing that we should probably keep an eye on this weekend?
Oh, it's a good question, but it has to be the resumption of the championship challenges of McLaren drivers. Nearly butchered their names. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. I think that Norris's turn in form at the end of the first half of the season is going to make it really intriguing to see if we can make that gap, which hasn't grown to over 23 points yet, even slimmer. If he were to win this weekend, of course, it would be down to 2 points, which makes it incredibly spicy. I just can't wait to see how it goes forward, and also who can bring the fight into that podium positions. You know, you've got the home hero, Max Verstappen, with his orange army, and George Russell, of course, in that Mercedes, in that revitalized Mercedes, which has found a bit of its performance back, challenging them. So, it's going to be a great weekend to see the pecking order, which we'll get to know soon. And I mean, just in terms of the general racing at the track as well, it's been a good one in the past. We've seen some great moves around the outside of turn one. I'm thinking Perez on Ricciardo, I think it was in 2021 maybe, which was a brilliant move. Iconic corners like Tarzan. So it's just going to be a great weekend of racing and driving.
Yeah, I got to say I agree on the point about the championship fight. That's definitely got to be what everyone is talking about coming into this weekend. It's so close. It's been so close consistently. And really, at about maybe a quarter of the way through the season, you would have thought that Oscar Piastri might be kind of running away with this title fight by now, but it really hasn't. And even though the same cannot be said for the constructors, although obviously always interesting midfield battles there. So, it'll be interesting to see whether Verstappen can do what he does best and somehow extract actual pace from the Red Bull, which I am always shocked exists in that car. And whether, therefore, does it count like as an orange 1, 2, 3 if it's a McLaren 1, 2 and then Verstappen's also on the podium? Can we make that a thing?
I think the entire Zandvoort beach will look very orange if that happens. So, yes, it will be a very orange affair if that happens.
Yeah. So if anyone has any oranges in the house, maybe consider, I don't know, arranging them in an artistic bowl or something next to the Grand Prix. Or carrots.
Oh, I have a fun fact about carrots and the Dutch, actually.
Yay.
Did you know that the Dutch were actually the ones to kind of popularize orange carrots? Because they used to be sort of purple and yellow. I did know that they used to be sort of purple because those were sort of the original variety of carrots that the Romans would eat, sort of purpley carrots. I did not know that we have the Netherlands to thank for orange carrots. I mean, the soldiers in the Trojan horse ate loads of carrots, and I think they were the purple ones before they actually got into the horse to encourage their constipation, so that they wouldn't have to take bathroom breaks while they were in the cramped area for ages. So that's a bit of carrot lore. But also,
why do we get the propaganda about carrots that they make your vision better, and we don't get any of the Trojan War carrot information? This is devastating.
Exactly. It's misinformation, that.
They do not make your eyes better. Can confirm, as someone who wears glasses and walks into things a lot, carrots don't make your vision better.
Precisely, yeah. It's a shame.
So I guess continuing on the theme of lack of visibility, if we seeing that I'm trying to do some good segues here. Zandvoort is predicted to be a wet race, basically from start to finish. Thunderstorms on Friday, rain all through Saturday, and a 70% chance of rain Sunday morning, which then slightly tapers out. And by that, I mean it's a 40% chance of rain Sunday afternoon. But I think it's safe to say that we could, considering that the last Zandvoort wet race in 2023 holds the records for the most ever overtakes in an F1 race. Do you think that it being a wet race could make it exciting? And do you think it might spice up quali as well, or will it mainly be in the race? We'll see a lot of stuff happening.
I mean, a lot of stuff can happen both in a wet qualifying and a wet race, to be honest. I think the race in 2023 was a banger, probably the best of that year, maybe, or maybe Vegas was slightly better, but who knows? It's between those two, I think. So it's definitely a treacherous track when it rains. There's a lot of gravel, but also the barriers aren't that far away. So, there aren't oceans of gravel to kind of run off into and then keep going back on, rejoin the track safely, for example. As we saw from Zhou Guanyu, if you can't get the car down slowed down at the end of the straight, there is tending to be quite a lot of aquaplaning that could go on. So that could cause a bit of drama in the race. But also, when there is such a delta between the tyre compounds that you're on, we saw Lando Norris and George Russell stayed out on the softs, I think, when it was bucketing it down in Zandvoort that year. And then Sergio Perez was in the Inters, and he came through and he was leading by about 12 seconds over Zhou Guanyu because he was also one who pit at the right time. And everyone thought, Perez is going to win this race now. And as it was, Max Verstappen, like he did in 2023, just closed down the gap and put the move on him to win. But it can throw up some unusual things, such as Pierre Gasly's third place in that race, his podium, which he beat Perez to. Alonso was second as well. Obviously, he'll be present if it's wet. So there's a lot to look forward to if that weather forecast comes in.
Yeah, I also think that in terms of not only tyre deltas and things like that, but also stuff like car performance, during the wet races this year, we've seen Sauber really up there. I mean, obviously Silverstone, but even in Melbourne, they were looking fairly competitive. Williams had a good weekend in Melbourne, although arguably less of a good one at Silverstone. And Merck as well. You could kind of talked about, George Russell maybe being in the fight for a podium along with maybe Max Verstappen at his home race. The Merck seems to perform a lot better when conditions are colder. So you'd think that they might be hoping that this weather does stay as a wet race, although you never really know. I guess the strategists want it to be dry so that they can do their jobs fairly easily. But I think if Zandvoort 2023 taught us anything, it's that I wouldn't mind a bit of rain on race day.
But conversely to that, you have cars that do not fare so well in the wet, like the Ferrari, for example, whose car seemed to lose all competitiveness when it starts bucketing it down. We saw it, especially in Silverstone. That was a mighty drop-off, but it was also partially strategy, of course. So, I'm sure they'll be praying that the sun stays out. But that's the thing about Zandvoort, is it is very unpredictable. I mean, even in terms of the grip conditions in the dry, it's normally quite reduced because of the amount of sand that blows over from the beach onto the track, which means there's not a whole lot of grip to begin with, and then add in the rain, obviously, it makes it a slip and slide sometimes. So
I was going to say as well about kind of it being right by the coast, because also I think I may be misremembering this, but kind of the wind has historically been, wind direction has historically been a bit more changeable at Zandvoort, which is probably because it's right next to the ocean. But no, I'd say, the cards are pretty stacked for it to deliver a good race.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the wind, it's been quite influential in terms of the racing as well, because the main overtaking zone is down into turn one. The cars are running quite a lot of downforce, so a high wing. And if you have a headwind into turn one, that makes the DRS effect even more powerful than it already would be, which encourages a lot of overtaking into turn one. If you've got a tailwind into turn one, for example, the DRS is less effective. We might not get so much racing. So it's also dependent on the wind effects. If it's a crosswind, who knows? Maybe everyone will just be blown into the gravel. But it should be quite an influential factor in terms of the racing spectacle that we get to.
I think it's telling that we've been missing F1 for too long, that the first thing we've talked about when we've got to discussing what's news on this race weekend is wind directions, sand, and the weather. But I mean, continuing on vaguely along the same theme, because I guess it does slightly tie into strategy. Anwar's not here to tell us that we have to tone down our levels of tyre chat, and it's Pirelli's 500th race, so it feels fitting. What are your general predictions for tyre compounds if we end up using any dry compound tyres? Obviously, we may just be stuck with using about 7 sets of intermediates.
Yes, that is entirely possible. But yeah, happy, it's not really a birthday, but happy anniversary, Pirelli, I guess. They're bringing the C2, C3, and C4 compounds for this weekend. That's on the slicks. And I believe they're running a special little 500 Grand Prix decal on those slick tyres as well. I'm not sure, I haven't seen it yet, but I think that's what they're doing. And you should see that over the course of the weekend. That is a step softer in compound compared to last year, which is probably needed given that one driver, I think it was Hulkenberg, maybe completed about 57 laps on the hard tyre. So in order to encourage the two-stop strategy, which is what we like to see because it produces tyre delta and thus better racing, it's probably for the best that we've got a step softer in compounds. Also just to encourage a bit more of the grip because, like I said, there is not much of it. It's at quite a premium. But also to encourage a two-stop strategy, there has been a change which has been introduced by the FIA just for this weekend, provisionally, which is an increase to the pit lane speed limit. So for most tracks on the calendar, that pit lane speed limit is at 80 kilometers per hour. But for some narrower pit lanes, it was reduced to 60 kilometers per hour. Those being Australia, Monaco, Singapore, and crucially for this weekend, Zandvoort. So the speed limit for Zandvoort has been brought back up to 80 kilometers per hour to increase the viability of that two-stop strategy, because if you it reduces the pit stop loss time basically, because you can get into your box quicker, get out of the box quicker while everyone else is pounding around at full speed. So that should increase an element of strategical intrigue, which is what Pirelli are trying to do. Their motorsport director, Mario Isola, he knows his onions. He understands the fans and what they want from Formula One, and also what Formula One needs. Because let's face it, the conditions of car and track and how they're gelling at the moment, they're not really getting on very well in terms of racing. So the tires are definitely one of the better ways to kind of help increase the racing aspect.
Yeah, I think Monaco notwithstanding, generally I'd say the tyre choices, well, there haven't been any tyre choices that Pirelli's made regarding compounds which I would declare as particularly bad for the or nothing that can't also be attributed to car performance. I'd say they've done a pretty good job because, yeah, it does feel that, I kind of think every regulation has sort of its peak competitiveness time. And I feel that was last year for this current set of regs. So really props to the tyre selectors for trying to keep it fairly interesting. Like, I mean, Hungary obviously feels eons ago, even though it was only a couple of weeks. That was made interesting because there was real sort of tyre fighting and different viable strategies. And, that's the sort of stuff we want to see. Obviously, it's most fun when it's for the win. It helps that both Piastri and Norris have very kind of similar performance levels, and especially after like a reset, like the summer break will be, they've kind of going in with the same momentum. But really, for any position on the field in the track, you want to kind of see strategy splits and people chasing each other down. And I'd say tyre compounds this year have kind of encouraged that, at least as much as they can when you're just picking some tyre numbers.
I agree, and I definitely agree about the peak competitiveness from last year, that point that you made there. I often think of last year as kind of the meeting point between McLaren's ascendancy, Red Bull's kind of downfall, and coming across Ferrari and Mercedes' kind of pace where they were throughout the year, kind of nipping and changing. So I think from that point, yes, we didn't necessarily need a whole lot of tyre strategy to kind of encourage some close racing there, or at least variety, because there was next to nothing separating the car's performances at some races, even though they are completely different multi-million dollar machines, manufactured in completely different ways in completely different places. They were lapping very close to each other, but this year, there is less of that. So yeah, definitely grateful for those numbers that Pirelli select every weekend. Loads and loads of tyres manufactured, of course. So a great effort from them. And of course, Pirelli were day ones in Formula One, who appeared in the very first Formula One Grand Prix and for a few years afterwards. And since then have been on and off, took part in a couple tyre wars, mostly as kind of background competitors. But since 2011, took centre stage. So thanks, Pirelli.
I think this has reminded me that maybe during the winter break, or the next time Anwar's away and we're left unsupervised on a podcast, we got to make a special episode about the tyre wars. We got to do that. So yeah,
we should just make a documentary.
We should do that
on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, we should definitely do that. Yeah.
The budget might be quite low, but I reckon we can stretch.
I reckon that we with some good PowerPoint slides and maybe a bit of Canva, we can make it work.
Yeah, entirely possible.
Make it in iMovie. We can make it in iMovie.
Yeah, why not? I think I still have my free trial of CapCut to use, so might be able to edit it in that.
Wow, this is fantastic. Yes, for any new people listening to the podcast, this is the sort of stuff you can expect the sort of suggestions you can expect to see from the very serious Warwick F1 show.
It will never come to fruition, but we can dream.
It will never come to fruition because Anwar will never let us.
Yes.
Okay, we'll stop getting distracted now, and we should talk about something just before we segue into predictions. I'm talking about predictions because, as we may know, we have a random prediction in every set of predictions that we do. And my one was going to be that at some point this weekend, Cadillac announced that Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez are going to be their two drivers for the 2026 season. I can't do that anymore because Cadillac's social media team beat the Warwick F1 Show podcast to it. So I feel that given that we've been waiting the entirety of silly season for something to happen, we should probably talk about it briefly. We did touch on this when they were still rumours in our news episode, which was episode 35, and you should go listen to that if you haven't already. A shameless plug for the podcast from me. But I feel we should probably talk about that. Nothing surprising, but I think there's rumours at least that they might be multi-year contracts. So what are your thoughts on this? Now it's kind of become official as opposed to just what people think is likely to happen.
Yeah, a lot of the rumours are really wrong when they're suggested as strongly as the Perez and Bottas to Cadillac ones were. Yeah, you did kind of summarise it for me. My first thoughts are that's not entirely exciting because these drivers are both known quantities. And I find it quite funny that a while ago when there was talk of this 11th team, everyone was saying, oh, we should definitely get an 11th team because there's so much young, exciting talent who deserve seats on the grid and haven't been able to, well, there just isn't room at the inn to accommodate them. And then we get the 11th team and they sign Perez and Bottas, who have a combined age of 70 and a combined number of Grand Prix of 527 races. So that's hardly exciting new talent. But I will say it will be good to see them back on the grid because they are veterans. They earned their stripes and their respect from the fans and the teams, clearly. And I like everything in Formula One. I'm just really intrigued to see how it's going to work. You know, has Perez refound the form, kind of compared to Bottas? Of course, can he shake the demons of Red Bull? You know, is Bottas still as fast in qualifying as he used to be? And those answers we're going to get at the start of next year, which is really exciting. But they are both very safe pairs of hands. I remember Bottas last year. I'm not sure he had really any incidents until the final race of the calendar in Abu Dhabi when he took someone out. I think it was Magnussen. He went into pretty hard when he had a lockup. So on the whole, they're both quite sensible in the car. They don't go for anything too crazy. Bottas, I feel like that's my criticism of Bottas in his career. He was never really quite aggressive enough, and he wasn't cutthroat in the way that Lewis Hamilton could be. I think he's mellowed out nowadays, Lewis Hamilton. He doesn't go for the crazy moves that he used to. But Bottas never quite mastered the art of the dive bomb, I think, like a Daniel Ricciardo would, or someone like that. But his 10 Grand Prix that he's won will serve as great experience for Cadillac. And, of course, Sergio Perez's many wins that he's had as well. Not quite as many as Bottas, but they can both kind of steer the ship. And it will be a stable beginning to Cadillac's entry in Formula One, I predict, with those two drivers.
Yeah, you've got to say for Cadillac coming in as a new team, even though, you know, they're established veterans of the sport, being able to know that they've got two proven race winners, kind of no matter how their careers have gone in respect to kind of their relative teammates, will, you know, that's kind of the ideal start if you're a new team coming in. We talked about a lot of this stuff last week, but I think that's a fair point though about kind of Bottas and Perez aren't known for being kind of particularly aggressive or particularly dive bomby. They don't really have kind of a particular style. I'd be interested to see how Perez goes, because kind of throughout his career there's been the sense that he or this may just be that he was partnered with Max Verstappen. It could also be that he has kind of extracted more out of midfield cars and cars slightly lower down the order than of kind of cars right at the front. And so for Cadillac coming in right at the bottom, lower midfield at a push, if they get kind of all of their prep work right, you'd think that could gel quite well with the sort of cars that Perez likes to drive. So yeah, I think that'd be interesting. Just interesting ones to keep an eye on as we go forward. And I don't know, I was thinking about this earlier. Is that this is fun? I was genuinely very excited about kind of these drivers, even though we kind of knew it was coming. And I was thinking, wow, I'm never usually this sort of just genuinely happy at the end of silly season. And then I realised it's because it's a new team. There's no one in my head who I thought, oh, but that's such a shame because they got fired. There's none of that, because like there's nobody who they can fire to replace with Bottas and Perez. They're just kind of two drivers who are coming back with this new 11th team on the grid. Yeah, the only disappointment came from the fact that I had to think up a completely different random prediction. So thanks, America.
Yeah, there was just kind of a void where the Cadillac drivers were going to be. Obviously, there was some talk of an American driver first, but, you know, I don't think Colton Herta really was in the running for very long for that seat, and that was a long time ago those rumours were swirling. So, yeah, no one particularly lost out. It is true what you say about the types of cars that these drivers have, Bottas and Perez, have got used to driving over the years. Because for Bottas, it's kind of been a tale of two halves almost. Williams were quite competitive whilst he was there, moved to Mercedes for 2017, and it was basically a dominant machine for the whole time that he was at that team. And Perez was used to driving midfield cars for most of his career. You know, he was kind of the Hulkenberg before he was picked up by Red Bull. Not in terms of podiums, because Perez got podiums pretty early on in his career, but in terms of promising drivers who were kind of a what if story. What if they got picked up by a top team? What would they be able to show? And we kind of learned that from Perez in 2021 and 2022 especially. But yeah, he did excel in driving midfield cars. So if Cadillac are in the midfield, Perez might have a field day. If they're back markers, I'm not sure. We'll see. But yeah, Bottas definitely in the later stages of his career was getting more used to driving the dog of a Sauber, as they were before they picked up their form this year, which is a shame for him, because I'm sure he would have been excelling in that seat too. But yeah, exciting times for for Cadillac, for the drivers, and for Formula One in general, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say Bottas has sort of finally escaped the ninth circle of hell, which is 2024 Sauber.
But also, I'd argue that being a reserve driver is also a circle of hell, because I don't think any of the drivers who used to have full-time race seats, that's not really what they want either.
That's never really the aim, is it?
He was being milked for social media as well, and it's just, I'm sure he enjoys that kind of thing. But
you also got to think then about that kind of always makes me think as well about Drugovich in the Aston Martin reserve seat, because Stroll's now been injured like twice while Drugovich has been the reserve driver, and yet somehow Drugovich has still not ended up with a drive, like even for a race out of that. Like you got to feel that reserve drivers can be a really good ticket, like it kind of was for Behrman, and also arguably for Hulkenberg and getting back into the sport when he was the super sub during COVID. But also, it must just be very infuriating.
Especially infuriating, especially when Lance Stroll competes in qualifying when he's not in a great state, and then decides to throw in the towel for race day. So Aston Martin don't even have a driver, and Felipe Drugovich is present, thinking, "Well, that could have been me," you know. So yeah, it's definitely a shame. I can't believe he doesn't even have a single Grand Prix under his belt in the 2.5 years of being a reserve driver. You know, it's really frustrating, because you look at the other winners of the Formula 2 series before and since, well, apart from Théo Pourchaire, of course, you know, they've been in cars, they've had their chance. Some of them maybe not had long enough. Some of them arguably maybe had too long, but you know, it's a real gut punch for Djokovic when he sees, for example, Stroll going out in Q1, and everyone's on social media, and you know, the Brazilian fans in Brazil, when Stroll drove into the gravel at the formation lap chanting Djokovic's name, and he's just so close yet so far.
So close yet so far. And speaking of being so close to success yet so far, let's get on to my predictions. I'm sorry, that was the worst segue ever. So yes, even though Anwar is not here to host predictions, he has still sent some in, and we will obviously be going through ours. Same as usual, it's not a sprint race, so pole position, P1 through P5, DNF, and random prediction. So, Daniel, would you like to go first? Who are you predicting to get pole position and your top 5 for the race?
Yeah, okay, so pole position I've gone for Oscar Piastri, just purely because he is rapid and the car is rapid, and I think this track will suit that very rapid car. And maybe the driver, but to a lesser degree than the car, because I have said that Lando Norris will reply with a riposte on race day to take the first position. He will win the race ahead of Oscar Piastri in second place. Yes, we're going for another McLaren 1-2 because we've had 4 in a row, and I'd like some points, please. In third position, rounding out the podium, will be George Russell, because, like I said earlier, Mercedes have kind of found their mojo back a little bit. Russell's definitely always had his mojo, so he is going to beat Max Verstappen, who's in fourth place, to the podium. Verstappen hasn't had a podium since Canada, and I just think, to be honest, the Red Bull have been overtaken, both on track and off track, in the development race. You know, Formula One, they throw out that graphic sometimes, don't they, of car performance, and I never really understand it. They do it a lot in practice sessions. It's the full screen graphic where they have the car's pace over the course of the year, and it's like from Australia to whatever race was last. And I just can't believe that as many teams as they show have lost time over the course of the year. I'm sure it must be relative to McLaren or something, but that's not how the commentators describe it, so I never understand it. But basically, Red Bull are quite a lot in the red. And that's basically describing their season so far, I'd say. It's just progressively got worse and worse, especially compared to McLaren when you look at Max Verstappen stealing those races, which were towards the beginning of the year now, because he hasn't done that in a while. But yes, P4 for him. No Dutch national anthem on the podium this time. Only one we'll hear on race day, and that'll be before the race. By the way, that's the world's oldest national anthem, the Dutch national anthem. It's called the Wilhelmus of the Netherlands, I think. It dates back to the 1570s.
I always think that the Dutch national anthem sounds like "O Little Town of Bethlehem."
I see. You say that. I always thought it sounded like a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah.
The what's it called?
This is another new F1 Society event. Maybe we should do over the winter break. Is it a Christmas Carol or is it an F1 national anthem?
Genius idea. Yeah, that's why you're on this podcast, idea. Lucy.
Yeah.
Such innovation, such as that.
This is what Anwar's hired us for. I'm sure this is exactly what he had in mind when he left us a judge.
Yes, hired. That's definitely the word I'd use.
Yeah, he didn't really have a choice. He's stuck with us now.
Yeah, poor him. Oldest national anthem must also be the most played one in history, probably as well, thanks to the 2023 season. But anyway, P5 Bortoleto. I've put it's a bit bold, isn't it? Gabriel Bortoleto in P5. What highest finish of the season? I just think he will shine in this second half of the season. Maybe it's recency bias because he finished at P6 at Hungary. But if I put in P5 there, I would have got 1 point because we get 1 point if we're one position away from our prediction, and 3 points if we're bang on the money. So, maybe I'll get a point if he repeats his feats of Hungary, which isn't too much to ask. I don't think it's not that different of a track. So go Sauber. What about you and what? Lucy, what have you guys put in?
I'll do mine first. I've said basically the reverse for you. I said Norris is going to be on pole position, but then I said Piastri is going to convert that into P1. As you've talked about, this could be through a nice, DRS aided overtake into turn 1. It could also be it's a wet race. The wet race ends up being kind of a hot mess, and nobody really knows what's going on with pit stops. So I'm not saying that this necessarily means we'll see a really intense battle with them on track. Just there's going to be a switch at some point, and that will happen. Maybe even multiple switches. Who knows? I am saying Lando Norris P2 because, as Daniel has said, it's happened 4 times in a row. And I think if I get only 1 point for my predictions again, I genuinely might not ever be allowed back on this podcast. Because I was thinking, it's a wet race. What happened the last time that there was a wet race at Zandvoort? Fernando Alonso did very well. He did very well at Hungary as well. And so I've said Fernando Alonso in P3. Just to be out there. I then said Russell in P4, because I think the Merc is good, but I think Fernando Alonso will get a podium and maybe just hold up everyone behind him. And then Hülkenberg P5. I genuinely think that Sauber has been a shockingly good car this year. I agree. I was tempted to put Bortoleto. I'm saying Sauber 5-6, and I've said Hülkenberg P5, but I could see Bortoleto finishing ahead as well. So this is not me saying that it's going to be Hülkenberg in P5 and Bortoleto in P17.
Now Hülkenberg's on his way out. New generations here. It's the changing of the guard. Gabriel Bortoleto, Hülkenberg's had his moment, that podium, it's all downhill from here. No, I'm joking. I think, it's a good point. Who knows how it's going to turn out, really. They've been pretty swapping and changing. They're one of those teammate pairings where one of them's doing really well and the other one isn't quite doing so well in the same race. They don't, from my recollection, seem to have many races where they have double points, so we'll see from that perspective. Maybe that'll change for the rest of this year.
Yeah. Would you rather have that as a team though? Because you can consistently rely that you're going to get some points, and it doesn't really matter who gets them from a constructor's point of view. Anywho, I guess we're not here to debate the various merits of driver performance from the constructors' championship.
True. I guess not. But I think I'd rather have. I'd rather have 2 consistent performers than one that has really high highs and really low than 2 that have high highs and high lows and they can't seem to synchronize in their performances.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay. Anwar has decided to be actually different with his predictions, and has said that in fact it is not a McLaren who's going to be on pole position. It is going to be the home hero himself, Max Verstappen. I mean, we have seen that Max Verstappen can sometimes make that Red Bull in qualifying be a car. So I guess that's not as unreasonable as you might think, given that I didn't even put him in the top 5 in my race predictions. He has, though. It's interesting. We've all said that the race winner is not going to have converted pole position. We've actually all said that the pole holder is going to be in second place as well. Anwar said that Norris is going to be P1, Verstappen P2, and Piastri P3, which is interesting from Anwar, because if that happened, that would mean that the championship actually swung. Like, Norris would take the lead of the championship, which would be interesting. In your scenario, it's that the gap closes to 2 points, and in my scenario, it's that Piastri extends it slightly. But so we've got a few different championship permutations from this. He's also said Russell P4. I think we've all kind of concluded that the Mercedes is maybe going to look less terrible than it sometimes has around this track. Or maybe it's just, is it genuinely developing? Is it just because we were thinking who are some top 4 teams we could put down and realised we forgot about Mercedes until we got to well, in your case, P3, and in my case, P4. Probably his as well. Maybe. And he said Charles Leclerc in P5. I think it's safe to say I haven't put the Ferraris high up. We've already talked about them not having the greatest time in wet conditions, and it may be a joke, but it's still an accurate one, and that is I just don't trust Ferrari on a wet race strategy. I do not trust them.
You know what? If it's a wet race, I think your random prediction from the other day might come in of the other race.
And what of them starting on the opposite tyres to everyone else?
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible in this place like Zandvoort as well. Ferrari.
This is very annoying because quite a few times I've made a prediction and then the race after there's a really good chance that I would have got the points for that. Maybe I should just keep saying things which I want to happen and then a race later they'll come true.
Who knows? Yeah. Maybe Ferrari will just be kind of licking their wounds after Hungary, and they're like, or maybe Ferrari are in the mindset of let's just fully send it. They sent the downforce, the ride height level to the minimum possible, and now they're just going to do everything in their power to just upset the running order and
Ferrari have famously
in the most chaotic way possible.
Yeah, Ferrari have famously not had any problems with the legality of their car's ride height at all this year.
And they've never previously had any issues with the legality of their engines either, right?
Ferrari have never made any mistakes before in the history of humankind.
That seems about right.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of mistakes, let's get on to DNFs and random predictions. Daniel, what have you said for DNF, and what's the random prediction here?
The DNF will be Yuki Tsunoda, unfortunately. Purely, it's not even vibes this time, it's just the stat that he's had the most DNFs in Zandvoort out of the current grid, which is only 2, and it was in his rookie season, and the one afterwards in 2021 and 2022. So, yeah, who knows why? Probably not reliability, maybe a little scuffle gone wrong, or maybe even an error. We know how that car is to drive. So Yuki Tsunoda will be the DNF, and my random prediction will be that no car gets lapped at the checkered flag, because every race in Spain has had at least one car that's been lapped by the leader. But I think that streak is going to end come Sunday, and there were also no lapped cars at the checkered flag in Imola, Bahrain, and Australia. So it's happened 4 times this year. I'm saying there's going to be a 5th this weekend. No blue flags. I think that's quite bold, given how dominant McLaren has become.
We're saying just at the checkered flag, though. So that does include, like, I'm thinking Imola and Spain, although not Austria. I don't think we're including where like if someone gets lapped, but then like with 10 laps to go, there's a safety car and all the cars are allowed to unlap themselves. That counts.
I'm just saying, like, yeah.
Everyone completes. How many laps is it?
72.
Everyone completes 72 laps, or everyone who
Or
finishes.
everyone who
everyone who finishes.
finishes.
So either everyone who gets lapped also DNFs, or nobody gets lapped.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's good. Well, that is very fun. I would also like the viewers to know that Daniel's previous random prediction was that I was going to get 0 on my predictions. So we're going to move swiftly on from that.
Lucy, I wasn't going to say that to save you the embarrassment, but you've done.
Well, no, I'm leaning into the image now that I can't predict anything. I'm just leaning into that.
Yeah, own it.
Yeah. I've said that DNF is going to be Behrman. I don't think Haas are going to have a great race. I don't really know why. I just don't feel it. Wet race, there's always going to be some DNFs, and statistically, the rookies haven't done great in the wet races, although Behrman is, to be honest, the exception to that. And I've also been spending too much time clearly around Anwar, who just keeps predicting that rookie drivers are going to DNF. And it has that mindset has unfortunately driven my decision as well. And my random prediction is not actually about the race itself, it's about qualifying, which is that all 10 teams get at least one car out of Q1. So basically, I am relying on Pierre Gasly to rescue that Alpine from the back of the grid. It doesn't have to be, I'm not saying that Q3, the starting top 10 are all from 10 different teams. Even if a team has a driver that starts in P15 and a driver that starts in P20, I'm saying it counts. It counts. This is also because I ran out of interesting things to predict for the race itself, so I've just gone for qualifying.
No, that's interesting enough, I think. Yeah, the rookie DNF, I mean, I said the other day on the podcast, because I kind of looked into it a little bit, we've had 18 rookie DNFs out of the total 33 DNFs from this season. So they've done 55% of the DNFing when they only make up about 30% of the grid. So you're entirely justified to go for a rookie to DNF. For Behrman, actually, he's had a surprisingly low number of DNFs. So I'm not sure you've gone for the right one, but a DNF is fair enough from a rookie perspective. So yeah, you might be onto something.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really know why I picked Behrman. I think for some reason I was just thinking Haas were going to have a bad time, and then I was thinking, the rookies will probably DNF, and those two, unfortunately, that Venn diagram had an intersection point, and that intersection point is Oliver Behrman. Moving on to Anwar's predictions, which are a bit more boring than ours, to be brutally honest. I can say that because he's not here. DNF. He's gone for Esteban Ocon, so clearly there's some wavelength here that the Hasses are going to have a bad time. Also, maybe both of them will do a pirouette, synchronized pirouette like they did in Silverstone, but just both DNF this time, and that will give both me and Anwar some points. And his random is that RB get double points, which I think is I think that's actually more interesting than it seems, because both drivers, I'd say, are capable of getting points, but that midfield's so close right now that, to be honest, really guessing that any team apart from McLaren, I would say, are going to get double points is, to be honest, a heck of a prediction.
I think so. Yeah, I hadn't really considered Racing Bulls. It's a good point. Liam Lawson's on 2 back-to-back P8 finishes, and Isaac Hadjar's had a bit of a rougher run than Liam Lawson, but I don't think that's entirely his fault. Some of those factors were out of his control. So if they both get it together, and it will just be about getting it together, because I believe the pace is in the car and has been since day one, really, in that Racing Bulls machine, then they will definitely be able to get double points, I think. They might go about it in different ways, which they often do. And, I'm not expecting a 100% clean weekend, but I don't think it has to be for them to score. So, yeah, it's entirely possible. I'm not sure when the last double points score from Racing Bulls was. It probably Monaco, I think, when they used that dodgy strategy.
I can have a check. Yeah, dodgy strategy around Monaco with tyres. Whatever will they think of next?
It was a typical, yes.
Do you not mean that completely 100% valid strategy where you just basically do the equivalent of driving at 10 miles per hour in like a 50 mile per hour zone?
They were basically grannies behind the wheel, is what I'm saying.
Genuinely, I think that's probably why Monaco has a slower pit lane, because otherwise none of the drivers would ever actually go round the track. They're just all cut through the pit lane because it would be faster.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe they'd just be going faster in the pit lane than they actually were on the main straight, which we now know is 60 kilometers per hour because they lowered it from 80.
Yeah, there we go. These are the facts that we're really learning. Yeah, I think it might be Monaco as their last double points finish.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, that's the sad thing is, though, that strategy that they pulled in Monaco isn't exclusive to Monaco anymore, because we saw Alonso do it in Hungary, which is kind of frustrating.
To be honest, though, I feel that Alonso just permanently seems to do that strategy. He's the new Jarno Trulli of F1.
I don't understand the reference.
I think he just permanently held the other drivers up. He just
really?
Trains of cars. Yeah.
Well, what about he's doing a Petrov 2010 Abu Dhabi? Well, yeah, 20 holding up Alonso.
Sorry, I just did a thumbs up and then realised that doesn't translate to an audio recording. So
I was kind of wondering why I fell silent.
Thumbs up. Well, yes, I believe that is all three of our predictions, Dan. We've not predicted exactly the same things, even though quite a few of us were along similar lines. As usual, I predict my extra prediction is that somebody's is going to go considerably better than everyone else's, and that one probably won't be mine. But yes, next week.
You know what? It really does amaze me that we have all predicted that the pole sitter won't win the race, because it's almost like we're saying that overtaking is easy in Formula One nowadays, which is not entirely the case.
I don't think we're saying it's easy. I don't know whether are we trying to manifest it, that if we all say yes. I think if we all say that the pole sitter's not going to be the winner, then we are in some way creating a battle for the lead, even if that battle for the lead is a strategy battle.
100%. That's what I've been doing with Lando Norris. Sometimes I take the perspective, well, if I put Piastri to win, the championship gap will open, which is a shame, but I'll get a 3 points in the predictions. Whereas now I'm just putting Lando Norris to win because I want it to happen, so it closes up the championship fight. So you could look at it from two perspectives, I guess, but it is manifesting on my side.
Yeah. No, I did that when I kept saying that Williams were going to finish P3, and then every time I did that, they're DNF. So I've stopped doing that now, and unfortunately, they're still DNFing. So I've clearly cursed them. Is the conclusion to draw here?
Permanent curse.
I think it's interesting. We that we've all said that Max Verstappen is not going to win not even going to be on the podium for us to. Anwar's not done this because he's never actually finished off the podium at his home Grand Prix. Obviously, the Red Bull this year is different, but because he won 21, 22, 23, and then he came second last year.
He finished second last year. He's never finished lower than that position, but I just don't see how he's going to get that high this year.
Yeah. The consistent streak of Verstappen's annual podiums comes up against the fact that the Red Bull car is terrible. Although I suppose he did it in Imola. He had quite a streak going there of wins. Yeah. So you never know. So yes, hopefully everyone has enjoyed the podcast and also enjoys watching the race this weekend. As summer break comes to a close, we will be back next week for our review and to see how poorly our predictions have fared. And Anwar will, I believe, be taking his job back next week. So yes, thank you for listening, and have a good one.